Hi, it's Mrs. Pope, and today we're going to be talking about solving proportions. Where our goals are to solve proportions, convert measurements, and calculate time and distance. We'll do a little bit of all of these. Example 1 says solve the proportion. So we have a proportion here. 5 over 3 is equal to 75 over n. N is what we don't know, so we need to solve and figure out what it is. So the steps here would be 1, cross multiply. This should be review. Cross multiply, so the diagonals we would multiply together. So the first one, notice I had 5n, because the 5 times the n, and then the second would be 3 times 75, which is 225. So step 1, cross multiply. Step 2, set them equal to each other. Again, like I said, this should be review. And then solve. So algebra 1, divide by 5, divide by 5. Don't forget to divide both sides. Make sure you show your work as well. So n is going to be equal to 45. The last thing I said was to check, so make sure you check and make sure that it works. So let's plug 45 in and see if it works. So 5 divided by 3, we're checking. Is that equal to 75 divided by 45? If you do this in the calculator, you're going to get 1.66 repeating, I believe. You can double check me on that. And then if you do this, 75 divided by 45, you should get 1.66 repeating as well. So since these came out the same, we know that we did it correctly. All right, next one. Let's look at example 2. Example 2, this is solving a proportion as well, but I made this one a little harder so you can see one that's a little more challenging. Same steps, cross multiply. So I would have the 10y from here, and then I have is equal to 8 times y plus 4. Here, this is fine. Now we need to use the distributive property for this 8. So 8y plus 8 times 4. So 10y is equal to 8y plus 32. And then we just need to solve. So subtract 8y from both sides. That's a y. That would cancel out. Here we have 2y is equal to 32. Divide by 2, divide by 2. Y is equal to 16. The last part is always to check, so plug 16 back in for y and see if you get the same proportion. So our check, like my little C, check 16 over 8. Is that equal to 16 plus 4 over 10? Well, 16 divided by 8 is 2. 16 plus 4 is 20. Divided by 10 is 2. So it is indeed correct. All right. 2 more examples. Example 3, we're going to convert measurements. So here you have 72 ounces to pounds. And this may be a skill that's useful maybe when you're shopping and you're looking at 2 different sizes of, say, I don't know, baby oil or juice or something like that. And maybe they're not in the same measurements, so you can convert them to the same measurement, divide by the price so that you can see which one is a better deal. So if we wanted to change 72 ounces to pounds, the first thing you need to do is know what the equivalent measurements are. So we should have made a chart of measurements. So how many ounces are in a pound? There's 16 ounces in a pound. So knowing that, that's the first thing that we want to write out. 16 ounces, and I'm going to start abbreviating, equals 1 pound. So find the equivalent measurement. Now let's write the proportion. So 72 ounces to pounds. We don't know how many pounds that is. So 72 ounces to, let's call it X pounds. I don't know how many pounds. That's going to be equal to the equivalent measure here. So we know that 16 ounces is 1 pound. So this is the proportion that we know from the equivalent measurements, and this is what we're trying to find out. Next thing, just drop the units. Once you have them set up, ounces up top, pounds down low, they're matching. Drop the units and solve it like a regular proportion. So 72 over x is equal to 16 over 1, and now we would cross multiply. So 72 is equal to 16x, divide by 16, divide by 16, and x is equal to, I think it's 4.5. Does that sound about right? Check my work and let me know. So 4.5, that's our answer, but we don't want to just leave it as 4.5. We want to say what we found. Remember, we were converting ounces to pounds. So 70, your final answer should say 72 ounces is 4.5 pounds. That's how you would write out your final answer. All right, we have one more example, and this is a word problem. And I'm going to do the Area J method for this problem, just to give you an idea of another method to solving word problems. So, Haley's family driving to Disneyland. They drove 400 miles in 8 hours on their way to Disneyland. Today, they need to drive another 700 miles at the same rate. So if they drove at the same speed that they did the day before, how long will it take them to drive the 700 miles? Question mark. So, remember we did Area J back in the beginning of the year. It's just a little method to help you organize word problems. This is analysis, representation, evaluation, so evaluate, and applicate. Wait, analysis, representation, yeah, application. Okay, so analysis, this is where you figure out and analyze the problem. What kind of information do you actually have available to you? Well, we know that the family drove 400 miles in 8 hours. We do know that. We also know that they need to drive 700 miles. Picking the important information out of the problem. And the question it's asking is, how long will it take? Okay, so that's the important information that we have out of the problem. Now let's represent it. That means let's try to put some variables or something like that with it to kind of start to make some kind of equation or proportion, as you will, what we have here. So let's say what our first variable, x, is going to be number of hours it's going to take to go the 700 miles. So keep that in mind. So the proportion that we have, x is the number of hours, and the proportion we already have is what, 408? So we know 400 miles takes 8 hours. We want to set this equal to a proportion because we want to find out 700 miles is how many hours? X hours. So now I've represented the problem with mathematical symbols. I've taken it from words and turned it into symbols. We've defined our variable, so I know that that's the number of hours. And now I'm going to evaluate it. Let's solve it. So your steps are to drop the units and then solve it like a proportion. So 400 over 8 is equal to 700 over x. Right? So we're going to solve this. Cross multiply. 400x is equal to 5,600. Divide by 400. Divide by 400. X is equal to 14. So now I've evaluated it. I've solved the equation that I made. And the last part is the application. What does this mean? I don't just want x equals 14 as a number. What the heck does that mean? No. Tell me what it really means in relation to what question we were asking. The question was, how long will it take to drive 700 miles? So your final answer should say, it will take 14 hours to drive 700 miles at the same speed from the day before. So this is a method to help you with solving word problems. Hopefully you liked it. And remember, as always, you are responsible for your own learning. Thank you.